Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Steve Willis, co-founder of Hope Sheds Light. On behalf of my partners, Ron Rosetto and Arvo Prima, I welcome you to our Finding Hope for Life family support meeting. It's always a joy to see everybody here. I just love Tuesday nights, and I love you guys. And thank you for all of our Facebook friends for joining us each week. We're very grateful. For those of you who are new, let me tell you about Hope. Hope is a non-profit. It's a family-focused nonprofit. Our mission is to raise awareness and to educate individuals and families about the impact of addiction by having the courage to share our personal experiences, by offering wisdom and strength, and by providing hope and resources that lead to the long-term recovery of the entire family. We want to remove the fear and stigma that's still attached to this disease. Our way of doing it is by offering a loving and safe and hopeful environment that allows families to heal and brings wellness to the community. We do that through these family support meetings. So this particular meeting is at the Holy Cross Lutheran Church. It meets still on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. The second and fourth Tuesdays we meet in our Hope office at 253 Chestnut Street. Opposite. I need some rest. I moved just, by the way, so I need a little more rest. I said, let me start again. So the second and fourth Tuesday we're here, right? And the first and third we're at our Hope office, which is still at 253 Chestnut Street, which is cool. And that meeting we call the Finding Recovery for Life meeting. It's a little different format than this. I'll explain what this format is in a bit. But that meeting we introduce topics of recovery. It's really designed, it's a group learning type of format. It's designed to cultivate good recovery practices in the family. We also have meetings in Red Bank every other Monday, and we have a grief meeting that we started, and I'm very proud of that. That's for anyone who's lost a loved one from addiction, and that meets every Thursday night. All of these meetings are open to anyone that's impacted by addiction. Our prayer is that by us sharing with you and you with us, you'll find the courage to change the way you think and feel about addiction and therefore become healthier. So tonight at the Holy Cross Lutheran Church in this Finding Hope meeting, this format starts with an educational piece. We're blessed with very talented folks from the community who come in to share for about 45, 50 minutes on a different, a topic related to prevention, treatment, and recovery. We then break out into groups. We really love that part, so we can share with each other what's on our heart, what we've heard. And we can talk about and discover ways to help ourselves feel better, to help ourselves go toward our own individual journeys of recovery. Does that make sense? Because this is a family disease, and it impacts all of us. So we all have to do some work. So thank you for letting us share with you. Hope is my passion. It's an amazing thing. We've been around for 6 years now, and I'm just so blessed that all of us are together, and you make us better. So let me introduce our speakers tonight. We have Jaun and Diera, and they're from America's Keswick, which is a Christian-based program. It's in Whiting. I love their program. They've been around forever. They'll tell you about it. There's a men's program that's been around for over 100 years, right? 120 years. And Diera runs Barbara's House. So we're serving women. I think it's 8, room for 8 women. So please make them feel welcome. We're very, very fortunate that we're able to benefit from their wisdom. Again, thank you for joining us. And now Jaun and Diera.
Well, I appreciate Hope, if I can abbreviate it, Hope Sheds Light, for just partnering with us. We know that addiction is an epidemic. We know that addiction is running rampant, and it's good that we can partner with each other, because all of us do various things to help and assist men and women on the journey. And where I'm at in this journey is that I deal with inpatient. I'm the director of the men's program, and within the men's program is a minimum of 120 days inpatient, where they get counseling, training, work therapy, and all of the above for intense purposes. So when a person, a gentleman, is have the aha moment and needs long-term treatment, we have the Colony of Mercy, and there, as a chaplain, we get to walk them through this specific journey.
And as a care worker at Barbara's Place, Barbara's Place is very new compared to the 122-year history that the Colony of Mercy has. We've been open about 5 years. I am one of the counselors and care workers at Barbara's Place. We're an 8-bed facility, and our program is a minimum of 6 months. And so you might wonder why we are significantly longer than our men's program. We get that question all the time. And really it's because when women are involved in addiction and they finally come into recovery, usually there is a load of other baggage that comes along. And sometimes it just takes us the first 2 months to kind of get to the same place that sometimes the men can get to just a little bit quicker, just because of the way we're wired. We recognize that our emotions and sometimes the trauma that women experience is very different in addiction. And so we account for that just in our inpatient portion. But I also lead one of the community support groups at America's Keswick Higher Ground, which meets on Monday nights, which is open to the community, as well as I just recently received my certification to facilitate an abuse recovery group. So working with women who are hurting is really a passion of mine, and it's our honor to be here just to share with you, our experiences and hopefully shed some hope in this journey that you're on.
Seasons of change. When we talk about seasons, we think about it as a time frame. And what we find out, 10 out of 10 people will suffer or experience some kind of sorrow within a season of life. Some of us can testify in the room now, we're probably going through something. We've probably been through something. And I hate to say it, but we're about to go through something. So there's a range of things that happens when we're in this season of life.
And we know 10 out of 10 is kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of saying it. And we're not here to make light of anyone's pain. But it's also to remind us that we're not alone in this. That all of us have been, are going through something, and that there is support if we reach out in areas like this.
For every season, there is a time in every matter under heaven. At a time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck what was planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. Anybody thinking about killing? I'm killing them, all right? Caveat, all right? This is just a time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast stones and a time to gather the stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. And a time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace.
Actually, this chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes just reminds us that there are different seasons in our lives. There are different times for things to occur. There are different situations that ebb and flow in this journey that we have. And so sometimes we have come into difficulty and suffering or a season of that, and we start to question, what just happened? We start to wonder, am I the bad person? Did I deserve this? Did I do something for this to happen in my life? And so one of the things that we really want to look at tonight is to remind ourselves that while it may catch us off guard, it's part of the human experience. That difficulties, various changes, is really part of just who we are as people. And if we can kind of begin to wrap our minds around how we look at our times of hardship, we have hope that we can actually get through, because it's really not about how we go. It's not about if or when we go through something, because we're all going to go through something at some point. It's really about how we go through it. During the hard season, sometimes we're tempted to question God's existence. We're tempted to question the goodness of the world. We're tempted to just wonder, and not even whether or not we can enjoy life or trust people. Anybody understand what that's like when things get rough? You're just like, we have lots of questions.
We even question ourselves
Absolutely.
about some of the decisions and patterns that we're making along the journey.
Absolutely. And yet it's all a matter of perspective. Paul Tripp says it this way. He's a biblical counselor based out of Philadelphia. He says, you don't just suffer the fact that you're suffering. You also suffer how you suffer. So we're not just going through something hard. We're also going through the hardship, how we see it and how we go about it. Think about it. We sometimes can compound the experience of pain just by what goes on inside of us. If you were to think back to the last time you experienced something hard, and many of us are going through something right now, what is it that you say to yourself in the midst of the pain? How is it that you talk to yourself?
And it's all about perspective. Today we're going to talk about how do we view what we're going through. How many of you know that some of our life learning lessons have came through our pain? And my old pastor used to say, use it as a schoolmaster. Don't waste the tears. It's pain there, so don't waste your sorrow. So use it as a schoolmaster, use it as a teaching lesson, and learn from it for the next season of your life.
So we're really going to talk about these changes in life and how we can use life's difficulties, maybe the season that you're in at this moment, in a way that actually benefits you in the long term. It's hard going through struggling with an addiction or struggling with someone who is struggling with an addiction. But we have come to learn, and we'll share our personal stories in just a moment, that when you can take hold of it and recognize that there is something positive, there is a gift oftentimes that can come from our pain, it gives you just enough hope to take the next step, just enough hope to wake up and put your feet on the ground, get dressed, and move forward. So we'll look at it from three perspectives. First, we're going to talk about why is it so hard? Why is hard things, why are suffering so hard? We're talking about how do we go through it well? And then what types of shifts do we need to make in our own thinking that help in this particular topic?
And I just wanted to share that one thing about going through struggle, it just reminds us that we're all human. Mm-hmm. We all have emotions. We all have things that prick us, and that we don't have to be like on TV, like these superheroes, and kind of mask these things. It's okay to be real and honest and transparent through the journey, because we're human, and that's how we were created. And so, talking about journey, talking about seasons of life, as a young man, I struggled. Family system, family dynamics was very dysfunctional. In that produced a very disobedient young man who ran against the law for many years, ran against the law up until I began to use and abuse drugs. Using drugs and abusing drugs landed me in incarceration, prisons, altercations with other individuals. I was suicidal, I was homicidal. I faced many death situations face to face. For many years, and I struggled like that, and I lived like that for many years. So when somebody talks about addiction, I know the pain that from using it. I know the pain that comes from working through the recovery process, because that's not easy as well. And so a lot of us didn't start with the right set of cards or dealt the right deck. And so the journey, the season of life, up until about 13 years ago, was a tough road. I had an encounter. I came to America's Keswick 13 years ago, had an encounter with God, which we call Jesus. In that encounter, I began my recovery road, and I'll share a little bit more later about that, but it's been a wonderful road since then. I have been clean and sober for about 13 years, so I praise God for that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on.
in my story, I'm the adult child of an alcoholic and drug addict. And so I understand the family struggle of living with someone who really, no matter what it seems you did, you just couldn't get it together. And I have been in recovery from codependency. I have struggled with alcohol and looking for love in all the wrong places for most of my teen and young adult years. And it too was my encounter with God that changed the tide for me. It was not easy because a lot of times you have to make decisions that go against what other family members might think are the good thing. And so we put this picture up. We're missing one. We actually just had a little boy. He's almost 5 months old. As a matter of fact, the last time Juan was here, I couldn't make it because I had just found out that I was pregnant with him. So it's actually full circle. I'm here now, a year later. But this picture, okay, I'm finished here. We use this picture because it's about a story of struggle between Joy and Grace. This is Olivia Joy. She's our oldest. She's now 6 years old. And this is Sage Grace. She's now 2. And in between there should have been or would have been another child. But there was a point in our life where we had experienced miscarriage. We had experienced money loss, meaning the bank seized all of our money and we had goose egg for a matter of months, where we had to then go to court and sue the bank in the midst of overcoming the miscarriage, getting pregnant again with our Sagey, and continuing to fight this battle. And this was it started in maybe March, April, and it didn't wrap up for us until the end of that year. And so we talk about it as our journey from joy to grace, because it was a point in our lives where we began to question. We were in ministry, and we were doing what we thought was the good and right thing to do, and then all of a sudden, all this calamity came into our lives. We had a foster son at that time that we tried to help, and it failed in our laps. I mean, it was just one thing after another, and we kind of looked at each other going, okay, what do we do with this?
Yeah. So some things in our lives is caused by our own hands. In my addiction, I made a lot of choices, poor choices. I damaged my family. I damaged a lot of people. And that happened for many years. But what I've noticed in some of these situations, these weren't my choices. These were just life situations. Life was happening to us. Here's the thing. Two people who struggled with addiction, this would have been a prime time for us to go back to our old resource. Mm-hmm. This is the hard time. If we can knock down a few, if we can go back and see our old friends, take the edge off a little bit. But we found our resources in God, in who we had our foundation in, and we began to move into a healthy recovery system, like Help Sheds Light, to move through this tough times in our life. And we had a community of people. The one thing I love about Hope Sheds Light, they believe in community. And how many know in addiction, we isolate, and we cannot do this recovery on our own. And that's one thing you got to support well, is community and building into. I think you do a peer-to-peer relationship. So the question is, why is it so hard? Why does it? You ever ask that? You look at your neighbor, you're peeking over at somebody else's life, and you're thinking, why do I have to have the family member that's struggling? Why do I have to have this addiction problem? Why am I experiencing this? And I'm looking at Tom and Joe and John, and they're not seemingly not going through the things that I'm going through. So why is it so hard?
It's interesting because if we thought that hardship wasn't hard, we probably would be told we were crazy, right? But at the core of it, it's because we have lost our comfort, we've lost convenience, we've lost control. We can't do anything. That's what makes hardship so hard. And yet what makes it even more difficult is our perspective. This is our middle child now.
I come home from work and I say, hey, where's the little one at? And so we look around the house and this is where we
This
find
is
her.
where we found her, right? She's in the toilet, right? I look at this picture and we go, yeah, sometimes life does get messy. But you want to know what she was saying when we walked in the bathroom? Cheese. She was having a good old time.
Yeah. So she found some hope in the middle of the mess.
And what I would like to point out is that underneath all of those perspectives, underneath the things that we experience, is a concept that I like to call heart murmurs. Inside of us, for every situation that we go through, when we are feeling negative, there's usually some expression of discontent in our hearts that is what's keeping us stuck in that particular perspective. We grumble sometimes. How many of you ever, okay, I know I'm not the only one that's ever grumbled because hard things were happening, right? I'm not the only one that's ever questioned, like, why me, right? I'm not the only person that's ever doubted or worried or been like, I'm better than this, so why is this happening, right? But those are what I like to call the heart murmurs. The Bible, the dictionary, and the medical dictionaries talk about that heart murmurs are actually an indicator of a deeper problem. That when someone medically or biologically has a heart murmur, it's actually an indication that there's something else going on. The heart murmur is not the problem. So it's not the fact that we are grumbling or that we're discontent, but there's something underneath that we have to deal with. And so underneath those heart murmurs, I like to talk about three things. First of all, it's doubt. We have pride.
Hold on.
Oh.
Anybody in this room struggle with pride?
No.
Oh, not just
That's
pride.
that other
okay.
problem,
We'll skip
right?
over pride. We'll just
Right,
move
okay.
into-
I got it, not a problem. And worry. I found that, like, we found that those are really the three categories, if you think about it, that things fall into. And when we talk about doubt, one of the things that I loved about the Hope Sheds Light, I was reading your website, and I agree wholeheartedly that the pathway to recovery, first, you have to want change, and secondly, you have to believe that it's possible. But if we're doubting that change is possible, it will be impossible.
So step one, you talk about pride. If anybody's reading through the steps or been in the steps, it tells us that we finally have to accept that we're powerless. See, that's admitting that we need something greater than ourselves to work through these things, and that pride says I can do it on my own, right? I could pull up my bootstraps, I can muster up enough energy, and I can do this on my own. But the first step says I'm powerless, and that we have to admit that we're out of control. Like there's some things that we cannot control, and to let it go, and let the right people come in our lives. And it takes humility in that to say I need help, right? I think that's one of the first things that we have to acknowledge is that I need help. Is there people out there that can assist us in this journey?
Absolutely. And then you follow it with steps 2 and 3, which then talk about the fact that we have to believe that there's a power greater than us, that God can actually help us in our circumstances, that He is the one that we have to turn our will and our lives over to. So when you look at it doesn't really matter whether you're into the steps, whether you're a Christian or you believe in a higher power of another sort, whatever it is that you find your hope in. The idea is that there is a real surrender that has to take place in order for us to actually push through our situations.
And I just want to extend that for a minute to anybody in the room. Maybe this doesn't have anything to do with you, but I wonder if that's where you are today, is that there's a surrendering that needs to happen. Maybe there's some things that you want to take control of. Maybe that you're going through and you're trying to hold on to something that is unproductive and has been unproductive. Maybe tonight surrendering might be the night that you might want to start in the journey. Is like, I need to let go of that specific thing. I don't know everybody in the room, but it might be addressed to somebody in the room. Might need you to hear that.
So these murmurs are getting in our way. So where do we go from here? How do we go through? If we know that this is a natural part of who we are, that we've got to deal with our pride, that we've got to deal with our doubt, and we've got to deal with our worry, how do we go through these seasons of change well? What is it that we have to do? There are absolute ways of thinking, spiritual and mental shifts that you can make that actually will make this journey a little bit easier for you. So the first thing that you need to realize is that growth never calls you to deny your reality.
I think what I like to believe is that the first part of my recovery was being transparent. I didn't need to, a lot of times in recovery, we see a face, right? We put on a mask, and whoever's going through don't want to really gravitate the magnitude of what they're going through or be honest or transparent, because I hate to say it, we don't want to be judged, right? People have a way of pointing fingers, and so it's about being transparent and not denying the pain. If it hurts, say it hurts. If it does, if you have an opinion about it and you think keeping it to yourself is helping you, it's actually the opposite. It begins to eat up, and bitterness begins to take root. And so be honest about where you are. Be transparent about how you feel about these things.
And you have to recognize that you can't fully recover from something if you don't admit the depth of what you need to recover from. Oftentimes we leave unfinished business. And part of that is just because we don't want to touch that. I can touch this over here, but that stuff over there, I'm not ready to deal with. And that's quite all right, but I can tell you something after working in recovery for, I don't even remember how many years anymore. It's that stuff over there. My pastor used to say it this way: the secrets that you don't tell anybody are the ones that will come back and hurt you. Yeah. And so growing through our hardships means that we embrace and we look at the reality of the pain. We look at the depth of the out of control and unmanageability of our situation. Secondly, we shouldn't try to avoid it. Now I know that seems counterintuitive, right? I mean, like, who wants to embrace their pain? But there's something about the human condition. Have you ever met anyone who's been through something? I mean, they've been through some things. And yet when you're in their presence, there is just something about the words that come out of their mouth that you're just like, they get me. Wow, that was profound what they just said. It's because they took the hardships of their life and they allowed it to shape them from the inside out.
I had a friend of mine who's a police officer, and he also struggled in and out of addictions for some time. And we did ministry together. We worked at the jails together. We went back and was assisting together. And he always asked me, he said, "Why does it seem like you're more productive?" I don't know what he was looking at, that you're more productive. And one of the things that he wasn't able to embrace was his testimony. He wasn't able to openly share his struggles. And how many of you know when you're working through your struggles and you share about what you've been through, it opens the floor for somebody else. Heather, you shared your testimony at the Opiates Awareness Addiction the other day, and immediately I connected. Because I know exactly, I don't know exactly your pain, but I understand. I understand. And I automatically connected to, and a host of speakers were up there speaking about different things and different situations. But we should embrace it and not avoid our pain.
Absolutely. And the third thing that we want to make sure that we don't do is we want to make sure that we don't ask it to go away too quickly. And that might be a scary thought for some of what we're going through at this point in your life. That if you were to say, if I have to go through this one more week, I may not make it. But I want to encourage you with this thought, that sometimes it's just shifting your thinking from trying to get out of a situation to, can I grow and mature and help someone else with this situation? That actually points you to the exit door from what you're going through. And I'm not exactly certain how it happens, but I do know that there is a very real dynamic. That when we shift our perspective from, oh me, oh my, what I'm going through, from, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I help someone else avoid the same pitfalls that I've experienced myself? It rises you above the situation so that you can actually start to see other options of how to deal. You can actually start to see and reach out to people. But one of the things that we learned in that situation when we lost our child was that as we shared our testimony, we just happened to be in a season where we were asked to speak a lot at that time. Wonderful, you know, right in the middle of a loss like that. All of a sudden, God wants to send us everywhere. We're worshiping and we're leading this and we're doing that. And we're just like, God, please. I was like, how are we supposed to do this? But there was something therapeutic. There was something absolutely therapeutic about sharing. I remember as I would stand and I was in tears just sharing what we were experiencing, I would have women come up to me afterwards in tears, sharing their stories of pregnancy loss from 15, 20 years ago. And we would stand there and embrace and hug each other. And she would feel that much more healed, and I would feel like, wow, I'm really not alone in this. There is something that strengthens us, that when we share our pain and we share our suffering and we don't look at it as being the bad thing that is happening to us, but it's just a season right now.
I think you guys are experiencing that when you break up into your small groups after you do this teaching lesson, is that you have a support team around you that understands. How many of you know you're not the only one going through the pain? Have you ever felt like you're the only one that feels like this, that you're the only one that goes through it? And so you guys have a good support team already set up for you guys, just to be transparent, honest, and you have a community of people to wrap around you right after this lesson.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes that I've loved for quite some time, it says, experience isn't what happens to a man, it's what a man does with what happens to him. We all have experience, but that doesn't make our experiences equal. Because sometimes you can go through a thing and get nothing out of it for a really long period of time and just kind of have the same experience over and over and over again. Or you can go through the thing and glean lessons. You can glean wisdom. You can glean insight that absolutely transforms the way that you look and what you offer to the people around you.
Now, professionally, I went through Bible college. I went through a Christian counseling degree, a certificate. Went and got ETA training, teaching training, and working on my master's in counseling. Professionally, I went through a lot of those things, and they're very helpful, right? They're great tools to work through. But I can tell you something. Because of what I went through, personally, is really the connector. When I see a young man, when I see a young woman going through a struggle, it gives me a compassion to be able to assist them. Who am I to judge, right? And so what happens is my experience in that moment becomes the greater teacher in that moment. If there's not a person that I can't look in front of and say, man, there's hope for you. There's not a person that's going through a situation that I can't understand, like, it can be different with a different season of life. And so, embracing my experiences to reach back a hand and help another man or another woman walk through these circumstances.
It's funny that you talk about there's not a person that we meet that we don't believe that there is more for them. I can absolutely say we would not do this if we did not believe that there was hope. We would not do this if we did not know from our own experience that there is change, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not as far away as you might think. And we come across, as we sit as counselors, sometimes we're the only ones that actually has hope in the room. That's always an interesting experience, trying to lead someone along when you believe more for them than they can believe for themselves. But when you've walked that path, even, and think about it, you're already along the path. You're not at the starting block anymore. You're here. You're seeking help. You're seeking community. You've already moved yourself along in this journey.
Parents, grandparents, family members, this is just a pause for you. I had a group of people wrap around me when I was in my addiction. I was lost. I didn't want help. All I wanted to do was consume everybody around. And it was the people that loved on me. Now, they had healthy ways of loving on me. Their experiences demonstrated a healthy way to love on me. And sometimes it was what they call tough love, and they had interventions for me. They had put boundaries up when it came to finances. But it was the people that were around me that finally gave me that push, right? And here's the thing, guys. Here's the hope. That every now and then, there's an aha moment. There's an aha moment. And when that aha moment comes, the people that's surrounding the loved one has a chance to embrace and walk them through that journey.
So now what? We've said all of that. Now what? Now what do we do? How do we go from where we're at to a place where we really can experience the freedom that God wants us to have in the midst of our struggles? One of our favorite scriptures is Psalm 27. It says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" It talks about when my enemies and my foes came upon me and they ate at my flesh, I looked up and I saw God. And in this struggle, we understand that God is here for all of us. That God wants us to be healed. That God wants us to learn and benefit from what is going on. We live in a world where there is just evil.
Run.
So.
All right, everybody get on your shoes and run out of here. Not run in that capacity. We like flight or flight situation. But what we mean in running a race, this is a marathon. Life is a marathon. We're talking about seasons, right? And so run the race as a runner that's looking for a prize. A runner prepares. A runner exercises. A marathon runner, he invests a lot in what he does. And he keeps running. And he keeps in the game. He keeps in the race. And this part is like persevering. It's running a race. And when you don't want to run no more, keep running the race.
It's funny. Just today, I was coming from Target, and on the back road going to Bailey. Is that how you say it around here?
Bailey?
I'm not from around here. There were, I guess it was either the high schoolers or the middle schoolers. They were running. And there was probably about 20 or 30 boys together running, and there was this huge group. There was maybe one or two front runners, and then there was a huge group in the middle of about 20 or 30 kids, and then there was this one young man who was about 50 feet behind the pack. And he had a lame leg where his foot kind of twisted out, but he was running, and he had his limp, and he was going, and he was going. And I watched that young man, and I'm like, I know he knows that he's dead last. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter that he did not drop his head, he wasn't standing there forget it, I'm out. This boy kept going. And I just was like, you know what? Will I do that? If I realize that I'm in the dead last of the heat, will I keep running? Because it's about finishing the race. It's not about what place I actually come in.
Guys, we all gonna live a legacy. None of us, one thing we all got in common in this room, one day we won't be here anymore, right? And in our journey, what are they gonna say about our journey? What are people gonna say? What kind of legacy are you gonna leave behind? So you might be tired, and it might be pain involved, and it might be suffer that's going on. But I like to tell you today, just keep running the race, stay in the race, stay in the game.
Remember. We want you to remember that this too is going to pass, that there is an end. We want you to remember that there is a power that's greater than us, that God is looking on us, and that He wants to be with us in our struggle. We want you to remember that you're not alone. You are not alone in this. That there are people who are willing and who want to reach out to you if you're open and willing to receive them.
And when I think about remembering, I look back and I watch the journey of how many times that God's grace was on my life, how many times that I was delivered. I watch my journey, and it keeps me encouraged in the race because I can remember the things that already happened. I've been through this pain before. We made it through. I had the right people alongside of me. I can keep going. I can remember those things, and it can be helpful for me to continue to push on.
Thirdly, we want you to reflect. The worst thing that you can do in this life is to not pay attention. The worst thing that we can do is to not embrace where we are, to be aware of who we are, what we are, and what is possible. Oftentimes we like to check out. Anybody here like to check out when the pain gets too tough? Yup. Sometimes it's better to feel numb. But the reality is that when we reflect on how we've overcome in the past, when we reflect on how other people, sometimes I just have to reflect on other people's testimony. It's their testimony that's getting me through, because at the moment I'm in the middle of it, I was just like, I just don't see how this is going to happen. But I remember someone who told me that they made it through this very same situation. If they can make it through, then I can make it through.
And when you reflect, sometimes you can find that there is some things to be thankful for. Thankful that I woke up tonight and I had the ability to have a roof over my head, that I had gratitude, I have air in my lungs. We deal with a lot of pain, and so we're reminded and we're confronted with a lot of hard situations. So it's not that hard to look at our own life and reflect. There's some things to be thankful for. I remember my old mentor would challenge us once a year. He would say, I just want you to meditate. In that context, he said prayer, meditation. I just want you to not pray for anything, not ask for anything. I just want you to reflect on things that you're thankful for. I was like, that's interesting. And I didn't know how many things each day that I take for granted, of so many things that I think. And that happens when you reflect. You get to see that there's many things out there to be thankful for. I guarantee you there's a lot of things right now coming to your head. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for that. And so I'm thankful for my wife, right?
Well, thank you.
It's pretty great.
And then lastly, we want you to rest. Rest in the promises of God. Rest that there are those who have walked this path before you and have made it. Rest in the notion that there is a purpose and a reason to all that we suffer and that we go through. And that oftentimes there are gifts that we look over. And also physically rest. There's the spiritual, mental rest that we need, but there's also the physical rest. That when we are stressed, that when we are struggling, that taking care of ourselves is so important. That when we neglect ourselves, it's really difficult for us to run this race. It's really difficult for us to even find daily gratitude for the things that are around us, because we're sleep deprived, we're overworked, we're overtired, and we're just outright grumpy.
I'm an anxiety guy. I like to take on the world and kind of control it in my mind, which I'm not doing anything.
He has meetings every morning.
Meetings every morning, right? One person encouraged me to say, listen, you're not going to fix the problem. God's up all night. Why should both of you guys be up all night? So he told me to relax. And I knew that's exactly what I needed. I needed to rest my mind. I needed to rely on a power greater with Jesus. We rely on Jesus in those moments. But I needed to rest and relax. And so, we just wanted to end you with that. I just want to thank you guys for coming out and just being a part of just this journey of recovery. Many of us in this room could testify and come up and share what they're going through. So we thank you for Hope and Heather and all the crew here to allow us to just share. We have so many things that we could talk about, but we decided that seasons of life would be something that we all go through.
It's an honor to be in this work, and it's an honor to serve with my husband. So I thank you for allowing us to be here. And